Welcome to this episode of Gideon's War and Crunch. I'm your host, Kevin Scheepers, and today I have Dominic Dom Brightmon with me, DTM. He's a certified leadership trainer with the John Maxwell team, a best-selling author. He has his own podcast, the Going North podcast, and the book with the same title. And he wishes to inspire authors to advance others and to advance yourself through that. Is that correct, Dom?
By George, you got it.
Great. Glad to nail it.
That's right.
How are you doing today, my man?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Thanks for the invite, indeed. And definitely different podcasts, too, because the thing is, you don't really come across too many podcasts focusing on helping out game developers because they're going to need it because it's a high demand in that field today.
For sure. And as the field is expanding rapidly with going not just in entertainment, but in education and in prevention of mental health, etc., there's just so many facets of applications in the future for game development. So they're on high pressure, man, and they need some help wherever we can get it. So I'm happy to have you on.
Heck yeah, indeed.
So for people that maybe are not familiar with your work, maybe share something that you're very proud of, something that would be the thing you would introduce to somebody else that's meeting you for the first time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, first of all, thanks again for having me on your show, man. I appreciate it. That means something's working. And for those who don't know too much about me, name's Dominic Dom Brightmon. I hail from the good old wonderful city of Baltimore, Maryland in the U.S. of A. And really, if I was to really put it all into one real thing that I would call myself as a title, would be a positive thought catalyst. Because the thing is, we have this one life we have to live. We have our wonderful life at work that may not be so wonderful for a lot of people, or maybe wonderful for more people, who knows, depending on their boss. And there's entrepreneurs who are probably their own boss, but at the end of the day, their customers are kind of their own bosses, because at the end of the day, you got to make them happy to a fault. So really, it's all about finding the good, seeking out the good, giving out the good, and helping folks to really stay in that good zone. And of course, there's going to be setbacks along the way, but it's about having the right mindset to really transmute and transform that wonderful negativity into positivity. So I'll basically be a positive thought catalyst, and that really just came from years of reading books on professional development and actually trying to apply at least one thing from every book I read. And sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. And hey, that's what life is about. It's part of experimentation. So hey, positive thought catalyst, that's me.
Wow. Okay. So take me to a day in the life of Dom. What are your practices? What are some of the steps that you do to keep yourself positive? Because difficult things happen. It can be very challenging, but to pick yourself up and becoming good at turning it around and fostering the positivity in a way. Well, what do you do? What is your step-by-step process in a way?
Sure thing. So usually waking up in the day, the alarm clock goes off, and then I turn on the snooze button and sit up. So that way I can actually give myself some time to really be quiet and to think, because the thing is, really, to win the day, you really gotta win the start of your day, if not the night before. Because truth be told, a good day starts the night before. And really just trying to make sure that I get myself a good amount of sleep as well, because that's one of the most underrated things that folks can do for their health. Because the thing is, I know with burnout, I went through that, I'd say around 2016 through 17, late 2016 through 17, because at that time I had a full-time job at a local library. I was also a volunteer leader in an organization called Toastmasters International, which basically was like another full-time job. And
Sure.
I published my first book at the time, and I was starting to get some traction with that. And my father was in his, I believe, 6th year of dealing with Alzheimer's. That's just gotten worse and became dementia. So trying to juggle all of that, being a part-time caregiver on top of everything else, like I've really just burnt out, and I didn't get a lot of sleep. And the thing is, like, really focusing on getting a good amount of sleep, like really those 6 to 9 hours every night, if possible, is definitely required, because that way you'll be refreshed, recharged, and you won't have to worry about really being as short with people, and your mind will be a lot more clear. And you'll be better for your body too, because I gained a lot of weight during that time too, because when you get 0 to 2 hours of sleep every night, then your whole body's not recovering. And I learned that firsthand, because it's like, wow, heck, even there was a study, this was like back in 2008 during the whole big recession, where it mentioned that there was a $50 billion productivity loss because of folks who were not getting enough sleep. And I'm like, wow, like who would have thought? It's like, oh yeah, you hear those folks out there be like, oh yeah, I can work for days without sleep, or like it's a badge of honor. But it's really not a badge of honor. It's like, yeah, there's gonna be all-nighters if you're in your early 20s, late teens or whatever with college, and I'm sure with game developers, like, hey, you're gonna be busy a lot. Like it takes a lot in a very, very highly competitive industry that's ever growing. And heck, even in the pre-call, which you mentioned, like, hey, it's not just about games for books for the consoles, but it's just for education. And we're in the age of really gamification, because the thing is, if you can gamify your life, you can really help to get yourself to a new level. So another thing I like to do is to track down my wins. I have a victory log where I write down my wins for the day. So guesting on this show, that's a win for today. Getting paid for just sharing a couple links in a blog, like that's a freaking win. Like being able to get up and interview a guest in the morning before heading off to work, that's a win for me. Like being able to not only have a successful interview, waking up, going to sleep, also being able to get a few words written towards a future book or a blog post or something like that. Like that's a win. The small things, heck, even waking up today is a win. Just those small wins like that, because the thing is, if you focus on the small miracles like that, being able to wake up, if you have to commute, getting to work on time and not getting into a road rage situation, like that is a win. Everything from big to small, track those wins, and that'll boost your confidence. So it's making sure I get a good amount of sleep the night before, setting a good positive intention for the day, listening to a great podcast, or listening, heck, even to some video game soundtracks. Like that's a highly underrated genre of music. Like folks, because folks be like, yeah, man, like hip hop and everything like that. It's like, yeah, hip hop is great where you find the good stuff, and different genres are, well, different strokes for different folks. But like video game music's built for you to really be in your flow state and to really be concentrating on getting to that next level. So it's like, yeah, I listen to video game music from RPGs like Final Fantasy and the Persona series, because hey, like classical music from actual instruments. Like there was even an article written out, I believe it was for the game Final Fantasy 13 too, where the composers for a villain, they worked for a whole month composing one 9-minute track, because they wanted to get the right feel for that villain. And when you hear it, it's like, wow, I feel like I'm in an actual orchestra right now. And it's like, wow, it took a month to produce this. And it's because, like, hey, if someone puts that much work into creating art like that, you'll definitely be in a different state of mind. So yeah, it's really all about having a good day, starting the night before, tracking down my wins, listening to something positive or upbeat in the morning, and really just getting to work like that. So that's a little bit on the day of life of Dom. Probably a long answer, but yeah.
I appreciate that, and I think there's a lot of really cool things to unpack here. I want to kind of backtrack and go into the first thing that you said with winning your day starting by having a good night's sleep, and I can only second that. One of the most low-hanging fruit to do that. There's so many processes, and I think to really highlight the things that don't go wrong, that don't go well when you're not getting a good sleep, right? Loss of memory, loss of productivity, concentration, focus, the ability to speak properly, etc., etc. There's just so many things that are there. But let me ask you what your sleep ritual and your sleeping situation is then, because that's very interesting, right? How can we get a good night's sleep? How does Dom get a good night's sleep? How do you, and to kind of quote yourself, gamify that aspect, how do you slay the boss of the Sandman in a way?
Yeah, I usually set off a hard cutoff time for making sure by the time I get to bed. So for me, if it's one of those mornings where it's like, all right, I don't have to be at a certain place until like, I don't know, like later in the afternoon, then it's like 12 p.m., like not 12 p.m., 12 a.m. So it's like midnight. That's it. I got to be done. I got to make sure I get these 7 hours in. Like midnight, that's usually the cutoff to be in the bed. I don't have to be asleep at that time. I just have to be in the bed at that time, because the thing is, it takes a while for your body to really come down from something. And also with making sure that you don't have any screens going on in your bedroom wherever you sleep. Because the thing is, if you have a room, especially if you turn off all the lights, you will have a great deep sleep. Because I've noticed a difference. I've tried it myself where it's like, all right, I got the PlayStation in the room, let me go ahead and play this, and then I get it on rest mode, it'll fall asleep on me, and then wake up groggy the next day because I fell asleep. And then the TV has this giant blue light that's even stronger by itself when the game's not on than the blue screen on the PS4. And it's like, oh God, this is freaking horrible. And then just feel crappy when I wake up. So making sure that your room is nice, cool temperature wise, and also making sure you have a cutoff time for when you're done, like with whatever you're doing. Because if you're a night owl like myself, that can be challenging. So having a strict cutoff time, making sure your room's nice and dark so that way you can really get to sleep. And sometimes I even have meditations going on in my ears. Heck, even something from Dr. Allison J.K., who was a guest on my podcast. She has these things called energy clearings, which is not your average meditation, because its focuses on vibrant health, confidence, and things like that. And she would say these things because the thing is, a lot of the things that happen in our lifetime is from our actions that we take usually come from the thoughts that we really don't hear. They're really built in our subconscious mind. And the way that she helps you to program and rewire your thinking is that she usually says the common phrase that people hate. It's like, oh, if you're broke, it's like, oh, I have no money. Money doesn't grow on trees. It's like she says that, and then she says, money does grow on trees. I do know how to make money. Things like that. It's like things just like that. And at first, it's like, this is kind of freaking weird. And then next thing I know, 10 minutes later, I'm asleep. And then I'm like on the third one out of nowhere, because it's this strange, weird energy healing. And that's some nights. Some nights I don't even have headphones at all, because the other thing is, you may want to listen to audiobooks while you sleep to, get the brain cooking, probably feed your brain with information. But that's not good all the time, because there are some times when I did the whole making sure the room was dark, getting to the bed at the right time, and then wake up all groggy still because I was listening to people talk all freaking night with the audiobook. So it's having a nice, healthy balance. So sometimes there's an audiobook, sometimes there's audio clearing, sometimes there's calming music, and sometimes there's nothing at all. And really, whatever works for you is really what's best for you. But like usually the best nights happen if it's a dark room, stuck to my time and stay disciplined on it. And then making sure that, hey, I'm not taking in any content through my headphones at night unless it's like instrumental music.
That's great. So I hear a bunch of things. I hear a cold room. I hear a dark room, no technology, and then maybe some sort of passive noise or something like that for the optimal sleep. And then you sometimes use audiobooks if you really want to immerse yourself in something, just to subconsciously keep on learning the things that are going on in your life or the topics that you want to be interested in, etc. And then you mentioned a guest whose name I didn't quite pick up, that is making these meditations that are first bringing to your consciousness the negative cultural biases probably that are there, that are programmed inside of our unconsciousness, and then turns them into something positive, and then that's some sort of manipulation. Is that fair to say?
Definitely fair to say. The guest name is Dr. Allison J.K., and it's Allison with one L, K-K-A-Y.
Okay, so if you're interested in that, you can go check that out. I'm always happy to support whoever is doing work that might help somebody else. And then I want to go into another topic that you mentioned. You said you have a win log, so you're gamifying your life. Is that you have wins to achieve, so you have a to-do list, or is it post-win, you're tracking it in order for you to really mentalize and savor in the positive things you're doing for yourself to create this cascade of positive things?
Yeah, it's really more of just a post, because I'm sure there may be some folks who may be familiar with gratitude journals. And what I've noticed after the pandemic in 2020, some folks are like, oh, God, I'm tired of folks talking about gratitude out here. So after interviewing someone else, and he mentioned that he has his clients do a victory log, and I did it myself. I'm like, wait, this is basically a gratitude journal. So again, with the whole reframing, rephrasing your thinking, and seeing them as wins is a confidence booster. And yeah, I do have my goals. Like, one other thing I probably should have mentioned earlier is that I usually have a set of 6 goals written on index cards to go for, like things to accomplish. And 6 is usually the optimal number, because I've done 3, which felt like, all right, I got it done, but it's like I felt like I could get more done. And then I think I got up to like 9 or 10 things on the index card, but only accomplished like 7. So 6 seems to be the optimal number. So it's like, if you got your 6-pack apps for the day and then you get those done, you can put that in the victory journal later. So yeah, the victory journal is really, at the end of the day, it's just things that you're thankful for, but it's also a way of seeing yourself as winning too, because the thing is, like, hey, if you don't want to do the whole, I guess, hooey gratitude, as some would call it, you can see it as you getting some wins in life. So yeah, it's just really just reflecting on the day, logging down the wins, seeing what happened, and some of those wins will definitely come from the 6 goals for the day on the index card.
Well, if you accomplish these, you have at least 6 wins to log, right?
Darn right. You might have a whole cabin.
You might have more, that's right. So in a way, you're not doing gratitude, but you're doing winningtude.
There you go, winningtude. Heck, that might even be an episode title. Who knows?
Who knows? We'll see. Well, if you don't mind, Dom, I think it could be beneficial for people that might be feeling the works of a burnout coming up, or maybe worried what to do if they're starting to feel burnout, they're in a burnout, etc. Well, if you're completely burnt out, then please seek help from a professional. But if it's still in the stages where you're managing, or you haven't committed to that yet, what would you suggest? If you could talk to yourself when you're in that situation, what would you say? What would your advice be?
Powerful question right there, because the thing is, there's times where it's like, man, this fire's going out. And then there's other times where it's like, man, I just need more wax here. Because it can be that stressful, and it's a tough place to be in. It's a tough place to be in. There's a lot of it going on these days, and really it stems from multiple areas. I'd say the 2 main areas is one from overwork, and the other area is that you're doing too many things, especially too many things that you really don't want to do. Sometimes you have to drop some things from your calendar. Heck, even I went through that myself in 2020, like even late 2019. It wasn't burnout per se, but I was adding too many things to my plate again because sometimes my like the it's kind of like with eating. It's like death by fork. It's like, hey, whatever you put in your mouth, that's probably what you're going to get out of your body. And it's like, hey,
Mm.
whatever you say out of your mouth in terms of wanting to help people and take action, if you agree to too much, you're basically agreeing to do nothing because you're not going to get everything done. And sometimes you just have to look at your calendar, look at your situation, and be like, all right, so I'm not contributing properly this way in this area. It's like, oh, let me volunteer for this organization again. I did the work before. It'll be a walk in the park. But at the same time, it's like without thinking like, hey, wait a second. I had more time a few years ago compared to now. It was a different Dom a few years ago than the Dom of today. And the Dom of today has to have more healthy boundaries set in place. And it's okay to say no sometimes to certain things. You can even say, like, hey, I appreciate the offer, but I want to give my best to this project. And if I say yes to this project, I won't be able to give my best to it because I have so many other things that I'm doing right now, or I'm not in the headspace to really deliver my best to this project right now. And just being honest with people with that, if you don't want to say the no route, because the thing is, it's not being mean or anything, because you're just telling folks the truth. It's like, hey, I'm overboarded right now. I got too much on my plate, and adding one more thing isn't gonna help me or you. So hey, and bonus points if you can even recommend somebody else too, and if they know about it and they're cool about it, then you'll definitely might even have a friend if they're not a friend already. And even if they don't return the favor down the road, or if they just say thank you or don't say thank you, like, you're still gonna feel the wonderful returns of that from somewhere else. That's the thing, is because that's, heck, even based off of my mantra, advance others to advance yourself. Advancing others is really all about helping them get opportunities too. So that way, hey, you can advance too, because if you're going to be at your best, you have to really know what you're capable of, and then also helping others to really get on too. So yeah, that's really what it's all about. Just being okay with telling folks no, setting those wonderful boundaries that you're going to be needing, and then making sure that you get things done. And also set aside at least a good 15 minutes a day for at least doing something that you truly enjoy. Don't have to, because a lot of folks tend to forget that when we get so bogged down in work. And I know with game development and all that coding, it's like, it's something you may enjoy doing, but at the same time, it's like, oh, I need to get my eyes away from the screen for a bit.
Yeah, it's they're often so passionate that it's hard to pull them away from the work. It's more challenging than not, because they really want to create these immersive experiences. So I think you're on the money there. So maybe have reminders in place too, that it's okay to do something fun, and potentially something that doesn't have anything to do with this. Now, you mentioned saying no to things is important to set boundaries. I'm sure you have some sort of selection process, and I think you have a connection point between 2 points here that made me realize something. You say, I need to have 6 things that I can win in order for me to have success. But if you're saying yes to too many things, what is happening is you're not even accomplishing the 6 things or less, which is resulting in a negative feedback loop for yourself, because you're not achieving, you're not doing, you're not meeting the expectations, and you're living within something that's not achievable, making it more difficult. It's more of an uphill battle for yourself rather than making yourself lighter. So maybe there's like a balance point there where you're saying yes to too many things and you're not achieving. And so there's a negativity there leading, maybe pushing yourself more towards burnout. But, and here's my point, I'm sure that you have some sort of selection process. With the title of a book that says Going North, I'm sure you have a selection process to how you go on about saying yes or no to proposals and things that are coming your way. Maybe you want to share some of your values and processes of how you're going about that.
Yep, sure thing. Well, one thing is figuring out, all right, so how long is this going to take? That's probably one of the first questions that pop in my mind. Like, all right, and if it's somebody giving me a project, it's like, hey, all right, so how long is this going to take? And then factoring in one of the major, and this is something I'm still working on myself, because sometimes it's like, all right, so this will be a breeze, and then next thing you know, 3 days later, it's like, hey, wait a second. What the heck happened? And so it's really getting an idea of how long it's going to take, and then also factoring in, I'd say really 5 to 10 times the time of that amount of how long it's going to take. Let's say if it's something that's going to take 90 minutes, and you're like, okay, well, this should take 90 minutes. Well, I'd say 10x that. You're probably going to need a good 900 minutes. You probably got to spread that out throughout a few weeks, depending on what you have to do. I know some folks are on a tight time crunch, and it's like, all right, let me try to crank as much as possible. But, hey, I just say do that for the safe bet. And it's not a guarantee it's going to take 900 minutes, but that was just a random number that just popped in my head. But like sometimes depending on what you usually do, 10x that in terms of how much time you're going to need, and then try to block it out as much as possible. And then if you still block out your whole day in 15-minute blocks, then that'll be easy, because like there are some folks who still keep up with doing that, and then that'll be a great way to plot out things. Now granted, life is going to happen out of nowhere. Life has happened for me multiple times, and that's why I'm still living. So you have to be okay with setbacks too. That's another reason why I mentioned, like, hey, you really have to kind of hold 10x how much time you think it's going to take, because there may be some surprises that'll pop up in your way. If you're using Windows as one of them, it's going to update out of nowhere, and you'll be like, oh, God, I forgot to turn off the dang updates, and I'll just sit here. Although that would be a good excuse to get outside and maybe get a cup of coffee or a drink of water or whatever. And, of course, there may be a sick relative. That's something I'm dealing with right now on the back end, where it's like, all right, caregiving for mom now. And you may be surprised, like, what happened. So figuring out how much time it's going to take, how much of a commitment I need to make to that, and checking on my other projects too, and making sure I think about what I'm doing now with my current workload, and making sure, all right, so this shouldn't take too long, or might take this long. Will this really, I'd say, deafen the quality of my current work? Because the thing is, when you try to spin too many plates at once, you juggle too many balls at once, it's like, all right, well, I guess some of these balls are going to be falling here. And some are going to get scratches, and some of them might fall in the sewer if I take on too much work. So managing your workload, making sure you know how much time it takes, and then planning ahead, I'd say a good 10 times ahead for that. And also having your values in place at first too, because one of the major things, like, respect and integrity are huge to me. Like, mutual respect for my fellow human beings just for being fellow human beings, and also making sure that being integrity, like making sure, like, hey, being honest with folks, like, hey, this can be done or not, and just having the respect enough to tell them, like, hey, this ain't gonna work out for either of us. So yeah, so focus on having your values in place at first too, because that helps out a lot, especially when you stick to them. And it could take time to find your values too, so I just throw that out there.
For sure, it's a long process. It took me quite a while, and I'm definitely revisiting some of them as I progress through life, and I'm sure everyone else is doing the same. Dom, as you've been working as a librarian, is that correct?
Yes, indeed. Books are my game, and people.
So I want to double click on that a little bit and talk about maybe the 2 to 3 books that have been the most impactful for you, and maybe the learnings from them, if you can remember, or like the milking that you've done of the books in order for you to take what works for you and implement it into your life. I'm a big fan of practicality. It's really cool to have information, but if you're not really able to conjure that into an active process, you're not advancing anything at all. Then you're just bouncing around noises and ideas and concepts.
Sure thing. Well, the first two books, I'll go ahead and say that they're from the same author, from John C. Maxwell. The first one is one I've probably recommend, is probably my default answer, is the 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. And that's a smaller companion book towards his Laws of Leadership book that he's more known for. But the Qualities of a Leader, that book helped me to really tap into my extrovert side and become a full ambivert, because one of the major things that John wrote in that book is how his dad was a pastor too, and that he would walk slowly through the crowd and he would learn about his congregation, guests and people like that, learn the names and add them to his head, so that way he can build relationships and connections with his people, so that way he can better serve those people. And that played a huge role for me in my life. Almost, my God, I think it's been 8 years since that happened, where a friend of mine was giving a presentation at a local business conference, and he mentioned that was going to be on, I think it was like a Thursday or a Friday, whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not working that day. Let me pop over and support. And I got there early, and I saw a table for Toastmasters International. And for those who don't know, that's an organization where folks can practice public speaking skills and sharpen up and polish and build up their leadership skills, because you get a sandbox. It's a volunteer organization. If you screw something up, folks won't be too mad at you unless it's something ultra catastrophic. Like if you go off the deep end and say something ultra political or something. But besides that, like, you really can't screw up there. So, like, being able to go there and then meeting another Toastmaster there and helping him with his table during the event, and then taking that 60-minute break to go hear my friend speak, I was actually offered an opportunity to volunteer as an area director, where I'd oversee 5 clubs in an area, support them, see how I can assist them, and even maybe start a new club in the area for brownie points and bonus points, because it's like, oh yeah, you're showing signs of growth, that's good. So was able to get that and rose through the ranks again and became division director after that a year later. And that all because I decided to help out a friend and be a support for a friend who was giving a talk. And it was a good talk too. And that book, that one lesson from that book still sticks to me to this day. And it's part of the advancing personality that I make sure I try to display, because the thing is, when you walk slowly through the crowd, you never know what opportunities you may gain just by learning about other people, learning about their business, seeing how you can help them, and eventually they may even be able to help you down the road. Because funny enough, I actually networked with a photographer, and about a good, let's say, 4 months later, I interviewed a guest on my show, and she needed somebody who could be a videographer as well and take pictures for a book signing, because it was going to be a nice big event. And his name was the one that was chosen. I sent her like 4 or 5 different people, and he had the best presentation. And dude was happy. He's like, yo, man, thanks for the referral, man. I appreciate it. And then when I needed my headshots done, my man gave me like an extra like 15 photos to choose from, when the usual like photo shoot he gives like 10. He's like, okay, yeah, that's usually double, but hey, here you go, buddy. So like, just being that person to learn about other people and learning how you can help them out, as well as being okay with talking with other people, because the thing is, we really need each other. Yeah, I know, especially with game developers, I know you probably prefer to work alone. I have my tendencies to work alone too, with like podcast editing and things like that. But the thing is, we still need each other. We're really an interdependent society. We need each other to survive. So get out there and meet people. That was just from the first book. And the second book, Leader Shift by John Maxwell, that one came about almost 20 years after the Qualities of a Leader book. And my main takeaway from that book, and he had so many, but the thing is just to be a ladder builder instead of just a ladder climber. Because it's great to climb a ladder in business or in as an entrepreneur in your own organization. But if you can build a ladder, like leave a trail for folks to follow behind and help them up, and make sure you hold that ladder for other folks to climb, that'll take you to new heights. Because that happened for me in my life when I started a podcast. It's like, well, folks been telling me I got this great radio voice for years, but instead of me rambling in a mic every week, how about I just interview other authors and give them a platform to promote their books, their business, and show another side of them? Because a lot of authors, they like to be introverted too, like stay themselves and write, but they got personality, especially those fiction novelists who are creating all those wonderful worlds, and really just giving them that platform to share their stories and to really put themselves out there and to learn from them. And learning from them helped me to be on this podcast today. So the third book to close it out, I would have to say that third book would probably, I'd say, I have to go with the Bible, to be honest. Because there may be some be like, oh man, Dom, I'll let you tell you, mention that religious ancient book. And it's like, well, that's me, buddy. But yeah, just the Proverbs alone. Like, you don't even have to be a Christian or religious. Like, just the book of Proverbs alone is definitely worth the other many books in the Bible. Just the wisdom alone in there. It's like really just reminds you about really taking your time and being patient, making sure that you choose the right partner to be with. Because, hey, like you, even the guy who wrote the book himself, like, hey, it's better to be on the roof than to be in the same room with an angry woman who's yelling all the time. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, I think I like protecting my peace. So let me avoid not only angry women, but just angry people in general.
That's awesome, Dom. I think there's a lot of wisdom in all of these books, and whether you see yourself as a leader or not, the undergoing theme that I hear you say is to slow down, notice, listen, ask questions, interact. We are social humans, and especially if you're feeling in mental distress or if you're feeling like things are going on, to slow down and to exit yourself from yourself and allow others to speak and to dive into their worlds. I think that can help a lot, and I think that's a really important lesson there. So thank you so much for that. Dom, I really want to be respectful of your time. It's a short format podcast we have here. We have 40 to 45 minutes, as you know. I want to give you the last couple of minutes an opportunity to say whatever is on your mind, whatever you want to share, whatever you want to give. You can advance others, you can advance yourself. You can do both. It's up to you, buddy.
Oh, shoot. Well, hey, I appreciate it indeed. Well, thanks again for having me, man. And I guess for those who want to follow me, check out dombrightmon.com for more Dom goodness and a positive thought to leave folks listening. I'd definitely say make sure you do something truly for yourself. I'd have to say definitely do something truly for yourself. It's okay to be selfish every once in a while, because that's really how you can truly be selfless, is when you're good to yourself. Because if you're not good to yourself, then you're not going to be as great as you can be to the world. So be good to yourself. Take care of yourself. It's really important to do that, because if you try to focus so much on putting all your life force towards really working yourself to the bone, but with nothing to show for it, then it might not be worth it if it's not truly helping anybody. So I'd say definitely really take care of yourself, be a little selfish so you can be more selfless.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Tom. And for you listeners out there, thank you for listening all the way to the end. I appreciate you, and I appreciate Dom for being on. Have a good day.
Sweet.